The incidents over the weekend follow a series of high-profile attacks targeting Asian women in the city, including the murder of Christina Yuna Lee, stabbed to death by a homeless man who followed her into her apartment last month.
Linda Ju was born and raised in San Francisco. She's as American as they come. But she says last year she began to sense that not everyone sees her that way.
I was having dinner in a restaurant in Marin County, and I walked in and there was this man sitting at the table across from ours with his family, and from the moment I walked in, he looked up, he just continued staring at me the whole time I was sitting down at the table having dinner, and I couldn't understand why. And it annoyed me. I actually wanted to get up and say, "What is your problem?" But I decided I didn't want to make a scene. Throughout dinner, he just kept staring at me until we left. And it took me a few days to understand what that was about. And I realized it was that he thought that I was, because I was Asian, that I was carrying the coronavirus, because that stuff was starting to happen.
That's a nice way to leave, dude.
Kind of food, shove it up your mother.
What, sir?
Go ahead, coronavirus. Go yourself, Corona.
Thank you.
Die of Corona.
About a week later, my 80-year-old aunt, who lives across the bay, was taking her daily walk around the area where she lives, and she encountered for the first time hostile stares from white passerbys, and she didn't understand what was going on either. And then a colleague of mine, another journalist who lived in Berkeley, began to experience her neighbors crossing the street. So that's when I began to realize, oh, this is another cycle of anti-Asian sentiment, and it's going to get worse. And that's what happened.
An Asian American viciously beaten on a New York City subway.
Violent attacks against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders skyrocketed.
The FBI is stepping up its efforts to counter the shocking surge in attacks on Asian Americans.
We let hate flourish. We make a lie of who we are as a nation.
My father, many years ago, always told me that, I would never be accepted as a real American. I would always be seen as Asian, as Chinese. And he and I used to have arguments about that because I was so, I was an American-born Asian, and I considered myself American, and I was always outraged when he would say that. I thought things had gotten better because Asian Americans have risen socially, economically, politically, and even in entertainment, so I thought we had arrived. This recent round of anti-Asian sentiment just dispels any notion of colorblindness in our country, because no matter how high we rise, whether it's Asians or blacks or Latinos, we will always be seen as others. And this whole thing about colorblindness is just a sheer myth. Racism is embedded into our system.